with animating Mario by creating a variable called frame and then making the frame run at 0.33, and then it went from the costumes of started at costume 1, and then it would go 0.33, 0.66, 0.99, 1.99, then it would go to 2, and then it would go to 2.32, and it would change. There'd be 3 iterations between each costume change, okay, 3 calculations, which slowed down his animation from being hyperspeed. And remember, if we change that to 1, then the frame would change at the same exact speed as next costume would, which is 30 frames per second, which is way too fast. So we slowed it down by just taking a percentage of 1 and then having that repeat until the numbers changed for the costumes. Okay, we also said that if left and right arrow were pressed at the same time, we'd just set the frame to 1. That way he's just standing. Or else, if nothing's being pressed, he just sets the frame to 1 and we switch the costume by frame. Alright, that was last week. We also did the define block up, which said if he's to repeat until he's not touching black or brown, he's going to change Y by 1 and set the gravity to 0. So looking at that, if you go and find your if touching black or brown block, we have our original set gravity to 2, which we put in there to offset the subtraction we were doing here. Remember, these two numbers had to match in our old calculations, but now that we've made the define up block, we can just take this set gravity to 2 and remove it. And if your up block is under it, just move up over it and then just pull set gravity to 2, and you can just throw that away. We don't need that anymore because that's all being handled with the block up now. Okay, so that's good. So what I want to talk about now is let's make Mario jump. And Mario jumping, the way we did it in our other projects was if he was touching the ground and the up key was pressed, we would set gravity to a positive number. The problem is when we use this define up block, remember, he's always 1 pixel above black or brown, which means he's not actually touching it. So we can't use that as our second condition, touching black or brown, because he's not actually touching it, he's above it. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to make a variable called falling. And what falling is going to do is falling is going to measure when he's in the air. And if you think of falling you probably think of as a negative number. Okay, as he falls, the number would get less. It would subtract or decrease. However, the way the falling variable is going to work is going to be if he's touching the ground or 1 block above it, falling will be set to 0. But if we leave the ground, whether we fall off a platform here or if we jump, falling is going to change by 1 until we touch the ground again, which will then go back to 0. So if I'm here and I jump, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, etc. Keep counting. Now even as I fall down, it's still going to be counting up. Then when I touch, bang, back to 0. Okay, so falling, whenever he's not touching the ground, is going to change by 1. So let's say if we were on this block here, this question block, if we didn't jump, we just fell off of it, we're not touching either color, so falling would start. It would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, touching, 0. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say if falling is less than 3. Okay, so that means if we press the up arrow, 3 is probably going to be about right here when we jump. The way, because it counts really quickly, so 3 would be about here. And sometimes we have these tricky jumps where you want to land and then jump again. So we don't want to say if falling equals 0 because it doesn't really give us any wiggle room for the next jump. So we'll say that if the falling variable is less than 3, which means he is pretty close or he has just left the ground, okay, then we can jump. Otherwise, we can't jump. So let's make the variable right now under data, and we're going to call it falling. And I put a question mark on the end because it is questioning whether or not he is falling or not. And when we start the program, we're going to want to set falling to 0. Set falling to 0. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have to replace our old if touching black. Let me get this out of the way. If touching black or brown then up. Remember, up was this right here. Because we're going to say this: if touching black or brown, up, or else, which would mean it's not touching that, it's going to change falling by 1. So let's just take our right arrow and we're going to move this up. Now it's important to know that this needs to come above this stuff. Alright, so we're going to put this back in the same place just for the order of the forever loop. I'm going to take if right arrow and I'm just going to slide it up. And I'm going to take out this if. I'm not going to throw it away though. Okay, I'm just going to put it to the side. Now take your control, go to if, then else this time. Because this time, if he's touching black or brown, we should say up. And we should also say set falling to 0. That way we know that he touched it. And remember, when he touches it, we don't see the screen refresh of the up block, so when he touches it, it will set to 0. And else, okay, or else, we're going to change falling by 1. So if he's touching black or brown, the up block will activate, which is changing y by 1 and setting gravity to 0. Or else, if he's not touching those colors, we're going to change falling by 1. So I'll run the program, and what we'll see right now, keep an eye on this falling block. Okay, I'm going to pick him up and I'm going to drop him. Watch the falling block increase, and then when it hits the ground, it will go back to 0. Okay, so the falling block seemed to have got all the way to about 15, 18, 20 there. So whenever he's touching anything, the falling block sets to 0. That way we know that he is grounded. Okay, so as he's running and we are going to jump, falling will start to increase, and then when he hits the ground it will go back to 0, which means we are allowed to jump again. So I had said earlier it's important that we put this in the same spot that it was, so I'm just going to take this if then else block and I'm going to put it above the left and right. It really isn't a huge deal if it's in order, as long as the jump script that we're going to make is after this. But I just like to keep all of our scripts in order so that the classrooms are consistent and we know where everything is in case we run into an issue. Alright, so let's make our jumping script right now. Okay, so we just created our falling script, so we know that when he's on the ground, falling is 0. But as he leaves the ground, falling is always going to change by 1. And it's going to change by 1 until he hits the ground again. So let's go to control and let's make our jumping script. So put it right at the bottom of your forever loop, and there's 2 conditions. It's going to be the up arrow key, or whichever key you choose to make Mario jump, and falling less than 3. Okay, it could be less than 2, it could be less than 1, doesn't really matter, but I like to use less than 3, and that was from the tutorial from Griffpatch, which a lot of this is based upon, just for ease and making sure you don't miss a jump. If you need to jump, you should be able to jump. We don't want to miss it. So I put my if block in, I go to operators, and I take my and. So we're going to say if the up arrow, okay, we go to sensing and key space, we'll change that to up arrow. If our up arrow is pressed and we said falling is less than 3, and falling, make sure you use less than, okay, falling is less than 3, and this number could be anything. You know, it really could be 3, 2, 1, whatever you want to do. 3 is what they use in the tutorial that I watched, and that's what I've used in the game since, because it just gives us a little bit of wiggle room, so that if we're about to land or we need to jump quickly twice, we are able to do that. Alright, let me go back to Mario. Alright, so if up arrow is pressed and falling is less than 3, then all we're going to have to do is, like our other jump scripts, is set gravity to a positive number. Let's try 17 for this project. So I'll hit my flag and let's test it. Okay, Mario jumps. He animates left, he animates right, and now he jumps. And if you watch the falling, when he jumps, falling will start to increase, and it will continue to increase until he hits the ground. So let me put him on top of this block, and I'm just going to run off it. I'm not going to jump. And when I run off it, falling will still change because he's not touching it. Okay, if you look quickly, you'll see that falling will change again. Let me try it up on this one here. When I run off the edge, falling changes, and we're all pretty good here. Here we go, falling again. So watch that falling variable right here. When I fall off, because he's not touching, it will change quickly. Then it goes right back to 0. But let's take a look at Mario. When he jumps, he has an animation block for jumping, or an animation costume rather. And if we go to his costumes and take a look, costume 5 is big jump. So when he is jumping, or if he's falling, he should turn to that costume. And it does add a lot of effect to make him look a lot better if he's doing a jumping animation or a jumping costume, and it gives it a lot more life. So let's code that right now. So let's go over to our animate block. And on our animate block, what we're going to say is, well, when should he change to his jumping script? Well, anytime he's in the air, anytime he's off the ground. So why don't we say that if falling is greater than 1, then he should change to that falling costume. Alright, so we'll go to control. Now we're working on the animate block now, because this is going to define all of our animations. We're going to say if, and this is falling is going to dictate whether we use that costume or not. If falling is greater than 1. So I go to my operators, and I put in greater than. We go to data, and falling, and 1. Because we want him, once he leaves that ground, we want him in that animation. We want him in that costume, that jumping costume. So we want to set the frame. If you remember from last time, when we did our animation, we did everything with frames, using the frame variable, and then we switched our costume to frame. So we'll do the same thing. We're just going to need to set the frame to what our number was. What is our jumping one? Frame 5. And then switch the costume to frame. So I'll go to looks, and we're going to, well, let's go to data first. I'm sorry, let's go to data first. Let's set the frame to 5. And we need to tell it, we could tell this switch costume to frame in our forever loop just one time, and then it would do it. But I like to just put it here just so I can get used to what it's doing. And then once I get a better hang that this is what's going on, then I'll eliminate a lot of these blocks. But for now, I like to see what it's doing until I get the hang of it. Okay, we're going to then switch the costume to frame. So now, when we do that, if falling is greater than 1, he should do that jumping animation. Let's test it. So when I jump right now, there he goes. Okay, he goes and he goes into that hand up, punch the block above him, spread eagle type of jump. Okay, now what about if he falls? I'm not going to jump here, I'm just going to fall off the edge. Does that frame happen? Yes, it does. So that's good. So now Mario has a jumping frame that will repeat. He'll stay in that until he hits the ground, which is good. And then if I fall, anytime I fall off anything, he will repeat that same frame. Here we go. Good, I got up in the cloud there. We're going to fix all this collision in the next tutorial. Okay, so that's pretty good. Well, what about ducking? This will be the last thing that we add in this tutorial, is ducking. And the ducking is going to be his last costume. And his last costume is costume 6, and it's ducking. Then we want to just say, if the down arrow is pressed, we should set the frame to 6, and switch the costume to frame. That way it says ducking frame, but we're going to have an issue when we do that. So I'll go to control, and I'll go to if then, and we'll say key down arrow, well, whichever you choose for your down arrow. Okay, if key down arrow is pressed, then I can just copy this, just right on this orange block, right click and duplicate it. We're going to set the frame to 6. Okay, and that's going to, hopefully, that will let us duck. Yes, it does. However, take a peek at this. We have a little glitch. Alright, I don't think Mario should be able to do that. He should only be able to duck in the place that he's in. He should be able to run, jump and move, and duck where he is. In case there's something coming at him, he should be able to duck. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take our key right arrow, key left arrow scripts here with the if right arrow, we change scroll X by -5, and if left arrow, we change scroll X by 5. We're just going to put the opposite in this, and we're going to put it actually inside of this down if. So watch where I put this one, because most of these if statements have been their own conditions. See how they all line up? But this right here is dependent upon the down arrow being pressed. So if we press the right arrow or the left arrow when the down arrow is pressed, we don't want to move at all. We want to just stay put. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an if then, and I'm sure there's a million ways to do this, but this is just the way that I put it together so that it looks consistent with what we did over here. That way we can kind of compare our blocks and see what's nullifying what. So if the down arrow is pressed, now dependent on the down arrow being pressed, so if it is pressed basically, and if the right arrow is pressed, we need to change scroll X by the opposite of what it would do. So if we press the right arrow key, we're changing scroll X by -5. Remember, that pushes the background to the left. But if we're ducking and we're doing that, pressing the right arrow, we're going to want to change scroll X by 5. That will just zero it out. We'll change scroll X by 5. That will just zero out this input when we press it. So if we press the down arrow and the right arrow, 5 and -5 will be 0, so scroll X will not move. Okay, and like I said, I'm sure there are better ways or a million ways to do this, but this is just the way I did it so that I can see, and you guys can see how we can zero things out. So we'll go to duplicate. Let me do that again. I did it a little bit quick. So put your mouse cursor on the if, and we're going to right click and duplicate it. And it will go under the right arrow, and these ifs will line up. But notice these ifs are dependent on this if. These will only trigger if the down arrow is pressed. So we change that. Now we'll change left arrow and change scroll X by, with the left arrow normally we change scroll X by 5. So that means if the downs arrow, we're going to change scroll X by -5. So let's run the program. I will duck. I'm holding the right arrow and I'm holding the left arrow. You can tell because Mario is peeking left and right. However, he is not moving. Okay, that's terrific. So that's basically it for today, but you know what, let's add one more quick thing that'll just take a second. Let me get our scroll X variable up here. Okay, take a look at scroll X. Remember, when we did our stitching and our coding of our backdrops, the screen on Scratch using scroll X is 0 on the left edge and 480 on the right edge. That's how wide the screen is. So our screen 0 started at 0 and finished at 480. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that if we run to the left, we don't want to see this. We don't want Mario to be able to run over here and show our blank space. So what we're going to say is if scroll X is greater than 0. So take a look at my scroll X when I run the flag here. Okay, scroll X is 0. So if I press left, scroll X is going to go to positive numbers. So we're going to say this: if scroll X is greater than 0, how about we just set scroll X to 0? That way we can't move left at all. Okay, so this is going to go in your main loop here. Alright, your main forever loop. We'll say if, we're going to use greater than, Okay, we don't want to use the equal sign because then if it jumps something or whatever, then we end up losing it. So we're going to say if scroll x is greater than 0, then we are just going to set scroll x to 0. Okay, that way he can't run left. So when we run the program now, see, Mario can't run to the left. We can't see that blank part of the world that we never coded. Okay, so that's pretty good there. But now let's fast forward to the end of the level. Okay, we can run through all this and take a look at the scroll X as I go here. Okay, watch the scroll X as we go. And we'll go as quick as I can here. We can add speed running like Mario does in the real game. And like I said, we're going to eliminate all this collision with the clouds and stuff in the next tutorial, hopefully. So we're almost there. I can try to fast forward this afterwards, but yeah, it's fun to watch Mario run. Okay, so taking a look at scroll X. When we finish the level, we're going to program this flag to catch Mario, bring him down, and then Mario should run to the castle. Okay, take a look at scroll X. It's -4995. Let's go one more click over. Let's just call it -5000. So we're going to say this now, because now it's the opposite way, so now it's going to be less than. Because if I go to the right, -5000 now, -5005 is less than -5000. And we don't want to go that far. Mario can only go as far as the door. So we'll just duplicate this right on this if. It's going to be the same type of script. And we're going to say if scroll X is this time, you can right click right on the green here. Okay, see this green on the operator? You can right click right on that and you can change it to less than. So if scroll X is less than -5000, then we're going to just set scroll X to -5000. That way he stays put. And we'll run this again. I'll pause this video so you don't have to watch me run. Okay, I'm back at the end now. So looking at our script, if scroll X is less than -5000, because if we keep going to the right, scroll X is going to get smaller. So -5005, -5010 is less than -5000. So we'll see if this script right here works right now. Okay, we're going to run to the right. He gets to the door, and he can only run in place. Okay. So one thing we should probably do though is add a little color over here. So just go to your backdrops, and it doesn't really matter right now. Just pick any shade of blue that's close, and just kind of use your bucket, and just throw it in there, and it'll make it look a little bit better. Okay, I can show you how to get the actual color. You know what, we'll just do that now. To get the actual color, let's click on screen 10. And when you click on screen 10, go to screen 10's costumes. And you'll see that there's a costume called screen 10. If you grab this, you can drag it right on top of stage 1 backdrop, just like that. Okay, so do that right now. So I'm on screen 10. I'm going to grab the costume for screen 10. I'm going to drop it right on the backdrop. Okay, but we don't want 2 castles, so let's go back to our backdrop now. And on our backdrop, we're just going to use the color grabber now. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to pick up the color of the blue, go back to my backdrop 1, and then just fill it blue. And it looks like the end of the castle, and then that's it. Okay, so to do that again, I opened up screen 10, went to costumes, dragged screen 10 onto the backdrop, let it go, went to the backdrops. I had already colored this a blue color, backdrop 1, but I want the actual blue from this Mario world. So I just click on the pick up color, click on the blue sky, go back to backdrop 1, and then just bucket and fill it. And then that will look like it's a continuous, and maybe this is at the edge of a cliff or something, and Mario can't go any further anyway. He's stuck there, so that's pretty good. Alright, so great job today. Good luck with this part of the project, adding the variable falling, adding jumping, adding scroll X greater than 0, so we can't run off the left side of the screen. Adding, scroll X greater than 0. Adding scroll X less than minus 5,000. And then we added our duck script with right arrow and left arrow that would zero out this right arrow. So minus 5 and 5 is 0. 5 and minus 5 is 0. So we can't duck and slide across the whole level. And we added a nice falling animation for Mario using frame 5 and switching the costume to frame. So good luck. This is tutorial 3, and we'll hopefully be moving along here. So I'm thinking maybe 4, 5, 6 tutorials, depending on how far we want to get into this. Alright, so have fun. Great job so far, and go get 'em.